Standardized tests have been around since the 1800s. Back then, education was much more than tests. Teachers weren't worried about teaching to the test, so students were learning more than how to memorize and regurgitate information. Today, education is all about standardized tests, but the testing itself does not accommodate all students. Those who grade the tests are unqualified, and too much is reliant upon the test results. Therefore, standardized testing needs to be improved or education will continue to decline. As a student who faces the pressure of today's world, I know how standardized tests can affect students because I've taken many myself, and you probably have too. Standardized tests are extremely common. Some recognizable ones you probably have taken are the ACT and SAT. First, I want to talk about how standardized tests need to be more accommodating to students' needs. In a recent interview with Lacey Wagner, a current student at Henderson State University in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, she was asked what her thoughts on standardized tests were. She said, "I think some students would do better without being timed. The pressure they feel is too much, and the standardized tests do not accommodate everyone's needs." Besides Lacey, 14 others agreed that standardized tests do not accommodate enough for individuals taking the test. The tests offer accommodations for disabled students, like students with dyslexia who have trouble reading, or students with actual disabilities. But what about the students who just learn or test differently? There are no accommodations for students with test anxiety or accommodations for students who learn visually or verbally. If they're allowed in school or class, why are they not allowed in a standardized testing room? For example, if a student who only learns by her hearing verbally, how can she sit and take a test that is all on paper and pencil? What about if she walked into a room and a test proctor verbally gave her the test? She would do so much better than if she sat down and had to read the test for herself. Second, I want to talk about how some of the scores of the test can be biased or unqualified. A few years ago, there was a story where Pearson, one of the largest education companies in the United States of America currently, posted an ad on Craigslist so that they could find scores for a standardized test. This is unfair. They hired people off of Craigslist that were unqualified to score such a test. But yet, people who applied for the job just wanted money and just needed a job. Pearson hired these people, and they unqualified and biasedly scored tests just to earn money. John Oliver, the host of Last Week Tonight on HBO, featured a story of a test scorer. In an interview, the young man said, "I was told when I was given a project that last year there was a certain amount of 2s, a certain amount of 3s, and a certain amount of 4s, and we expected to be similar this year. If I didn't, they told me I was scoring too many of each." This shows how scoring of tests can be biased. They are influenced by the people that run the test to give out certain scores to certain students, which is unfair because students are not getting the scores they obviously deserve in some cases. In Test Anxiety, Pressure on College Students, More Common Now Than in Past, an article by Monica Dziak, she stated that the studies have shown stress levels of students today in America equal the stress levels of psychiatric patients in the 1950s. This is astonishing and hard to hear, that students today face enough pressure that their stress levels have equaled psychiatric patients of the 1950s. Third, the tests only measure how a student performs on that day and not all year. There are a lot of factors that can alter performance. For instance, or example, if a girl is sick, she has a cold or the flu, but she has to go take this standardized test on this day. So she goes and takes the standardized test. She sits in the classroom and takes the standardized test. But the entire time she's coughing and sneezing because she's sick. So not only is she distracting herself and causing herself to lose time, which she's already being pressed on, she is distracting other people in the classroom. There might be a girl with ADD who's sitting on the back row who can't focus because all she can hear is this girl coughing and sneezing. So not only is she being a distraction and causing harm to her test scores, but she's also being a distraction and causing harm to the other students' test scores in the room. Also, a class that a teacher teaches in a school. That teacher grades on how the student does all year long. So for instance, if you took APUSH, a AP US History exam, that's a standardized test, and it's based on how you only do that day. But the entire school year and the grade you get in the class means nothing about how you pass the APUSH exam. So if I go and take APUSH, I go into the class and I make an A in the class because it is based off my assignments, my quizzes, my tests, my projects, and my class participation. I get an A in the class because I was there all year learning and ready. But on that one day I go to take the APUSH exam, I only get a 2. So I don't get credit for the entire class that I just took because it's based off of the performance of that one day. Because some girl was coughing, or something bad happened to me that morning, or I didn't get sleep because of circumstances that impacted me, for an accommodation that wasn't met. There was a reason that I didn't perform the way I wanted to, and my test was invalid because of that. For a student that has trouble in a class, a test may be the only way that they can get credit for something. But what if they have testing anxiety? What if that's why they haven't passed a class? What is there to help that student when they go take a standardized test? There's also not a lot of ways to study for most standardized tests. There are some, such as AP exams, that you have all year to study and prepare for. But things like the SAT or the ACT, you can only prep of how to take the test, not the material on the test. And that can be affected. If I have study guides and Quizlet and flashcards for all of my classes in school, why can't I have them for a test that means more than school? My GPA can only compare so much to my ACT score when it means getting into college. There's a lot of pressure on students today to perform perfect, but perfect does not exist. It's hard when you're a student who faces so much challenge in school, and a standardized test means so much, and there's only so many ways you can take it. Standardized tests need to take in account of health, learning barriers, anxiety, test anxiety, ADD, ADHD, and so much more when it comes to a student taking a standardized test. They say not to fix things that are broken. So we need to stop fixing the students and start fixing the education. And that starts with standardized testing. The goal of education is to help encourage and help a student have a successful future. But standardized tests harm this for students. And the way they work now needs to be improved, or students and education never will.